So thanks everybody to attending our second session at Brainstorm live event that happening as a part of exhibition Mediate, in-betweenness. And our second pair of guests is Sebastian Frese Bülow and Najam Assar. Sebastian runs the Humanity Lab facilities at Aalborg University Copenhagen and lectures on theoretical and practical aspects of video production and media art. He has worked at the Royal College of Art in London, the IT-University and Kunstakademiet, and with Holographic Video Design at viZoo. He mainly works with live visuals and developing visual instruments and has done more than 500 live shows, events, and concerts since like 1998. And Najam Assar is one of participants of the exhibition and present the work that he produced, Resonate Greenland. He is also a serial creative entrepreneur and currently the CEO of Free Arts company. His interests include digital heritage, computer games, and internet culture. He speaks widely about the role of technology in uplifting emerging cultures economies. So for these two extremely interesting guests, we choose two very, as we think, nice words, hyperlink and travel. And now we really want to hear what you could find as connections between them, how you interpret them, and how you can find their in-between relations. So that's time for you to speak.
Sebastian.
Yes. Okay. Well, one thing. Well, of course, you can say that that there's some kind of an analogy between the hyperlink and the travel, because you go from one place to the other, one in a digital context and another in most cases very physical context. I think one thing that separates the two concepts is that the hyperlink is consisting of an order, and then it's executed, and then you're there immediately, which is more akin to teleportation than it is to actual travel. Whereas in the travel, in many cases, I find, at least in my own personal travels, it's not so much the getting there that's the important part. It's the travel. It's the movement that you have and the experiences along the way. What's your take on that, Najam?
No, I mean, I think you beautifully summed it up. This transition part of going from one place to another and gathering all the memories with it is what travel is. I mean, it's more not. I mean, it's still about going to the final destination, but it's still about the process of going there. But with hyperlink, it's instant. It's fast. It's instant. It's giving you what you want. For example, destination, and still it has this yeah. Still, it's different from travel. So I agree with you, and I think one thing I would add in both these words is that it's still kind of a displacement from your original position and original state, and yeah, in its own nature and its own kind, both offer us same set of displacement from our current state. But still, I feel, yeah, I agree. It's entirely different in the way it's executed.
It's interesting what you said about that the hyperlink gives you what you want, because that's actually a different thing than the travel in its own right, because the travel does not necessarily give you what you want, neither in the destination nor in the process of getting there. I, for one, have at least experienced a number of times that the travel I intended ended up being a totally different ballgame altogether, you know. And I'm not just talking about missing planes and stuff, although I've done my fair share.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I mean, for me, even in hyperlinks, for example, I just click one link, I go to some other website, and then I ended up experiencing an entirely different thing that I was not intend to do in the start. So I feel it's just hyperlinks are, and I think we take hyperlinks for granted in our experiences on website. We just feel that, okay, I click the about button and a page will show up about, but I think this connection and this interlinking of different virtual paths it gives us the same meaning, but since it's very fast, it's just may not be will not leave as much as instant in our brain than the travel does, which is kind of a progressive and a slow process of doing there. But I feel, I mean, for me, I feel these two words resonate a lot from my personal experiences as well. It's just ability to go from one place to another.
Well, it could also be a funny experiment to try and combine the two, you know. So for example, if you move into the realm of sci-fi, let's say Star Trek, for example, you know, then you have this notion of hyper travel, where you go beyond the speed of light, allowing you to travel huge distances at the blink of an eye, you know. Janet Murray wrote partly about it in Hamlet on the Holodeck, where you have this notion of the travel as being that which you traverse through a narrative, and that narrative can be modular and have many branches that you even possibly can visit over and over again. So there might be some kind of an analogy to travel to, let's say, if you go to the same place every year and you start exploring what are the tiny minute differences. You know, we go camping every year, for example, and it's the same place because my son likes it that way.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I totally agree with you. I think this time factor has a lot to play between both of these words. For example, in 2000s, when you had a dial-up modem and you have to click a hyperlink to open a new page, it takes a lot of time. And then you understand, then you could actually think a few things while the page is loading. You know, you could go quickly grab some water or, you know, do something in between. But this fast internet and fast, it's just have made us, it clicks, not even nanoseconds, even less. We just loaded the pages and we don't even blink an eye with there. So I feel the travel itself has its own beauty because it has this waiting time and we just go somewhere and this entire phenomena. Sometimes, but we do get tired if we have to travel 10 hours to go to a destination. I mean, there are some hours we'll be tired. Like, oh, okay, what is this going on? Let's reach this. But I think, I mean, this time and then this time in between two words is kind of really important to understand how something.
Do you think that we turn into
super interesting that you?
Yeah.
I just like thinking that it's like super interesting that you started this discussion by pointing out what is the difference between these two notions, and then came to the fact that that the thing that you started to speak about, time, is at the end something that's very like close to each of them, and like at the end, like this like controversial point that was at the beginning now is already this in between connection that we are looking for. And what also is interesting, like in your Najam's, it's really interesting how like hyperlinks and both travel also change through the times, because before we could spend like a few days to travel from one place to another, and now it's also extremely faster. Sorry for interrupting.
It's almost instantaneous. But do you think that we become lazy travelers from being used to hyperlinking all over the place when we're online?
I think this is also kind of the culture that we are living in right now. We want everything fast and warm and fast and now. You know, that's supposed to become. So
instant gratification culture.
Yeah, I think it's a lot to do with our personalities as well now. For example, I come from a country where paperworks, even if it's 5 minutes work, it will take at least 1 month. And I understand that I need to be ready for this 1 month period. But if you go to a different culture where it is just 5 minutes and it's 5 minutes, you are like really shocked. You're like, wow, okay, I was not expecting this. So
I think that Denmark is so thoroughly regulated that if the digital interface between the council and you and other systems, it goes through something called e-box. It has a 2-factor verification. So I use my finger to execute what is essentially a hyperlink to access all my personal data and write to the council or the tax system or whatever the case may be through my personal ID, which you would normally need if you were doing a lot of traveling, for example, going through these stop posts that are borderers. You know, there's another analogy there that's interesting to explore, where you have in hyperlinks, in some cases, and increasingly so, you need to sign in.
Do you think
a number of pages?
Do you think in this COVID and post-COVID time, we are looking for an escape from this instantaneous action? Are we looking for something which is calmer or something which we would want to spend time on? not this instant thing happening. Do you think it's something we are looking at right now?
Possibly. I mean, the original analogy that there was being used for when browsing the web was called surfing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that includes a very superficial way of navigating an ocean. You don't say, I'm going to dive into the World Wide Web. You were surfing it, which indicates that you're sort of just checking out the waves and see what's moving along, you know. Yeah. Same thing happened in the early 90s and mid 90s cyber literature that also had a lot of these analogies and this sort of hope of being able to get an overview of huge, vast oceans of data, but you never actually dug into it as such. That's not something that I have seen that was really part of the cultural narrative of the time. Maybe that's changing now. Maybe because we have online, that at least I've noticed that I spend so much more time now remembering my passwords and accessing X number. It's driving me insane. I think yesterday, I'm moving into a new computer right now. I think I typed in 150 passwords in one day simply just to migrate the damn thing, you know. And this is quite akin to a sort of really close border policy that used to be back in the post-war days, really. That may change now, so that people end up going down in speed and actually digging into wherever site they're on, whatever place they're in, that they actually start exploring more on a local level, also online. At least I kind of hope so.
So we have, to be honest, very close question to what we're discussing now in our chat. So what do you think? Will internet be more interesting for us? Could be or will be more interesting for us now with long loading time? Like if we will experience internet like traveling, waiting for something to happen, to open, because now we're speaking about high speed and so on. But if we go back, how we can experience, what we can think about internet being again with the long loading times? Can it give something for us in our new reality?
That's a really interesting question. Well, if we continue this notion that you know, perhaps with the quarantine and everything has been, it seems to me like our mental gears, if you will, our thought processes has been forced to go slower. At least it has for me. You know, all of a sudden I'm baking, and before I couldn't bake to save my life because I would be exploding over the oven. It was so flipping slow, and the yeast had to do something. I was like, I want to control it now. Where now I'm gaining another sense of time. You know, I have another perspective on actually perceiving the time that I'm in, and that has most definitely changed, at least for me, where I've been kind of forced to it. So that might actually do something in the way that we consume culture. Even I'm thinking that could be something that is you know, I don't know about you, but I'm getting pretty sick and tired of Netflix, for example.
You know? I think. I mean, the one thing I've heard again and again growing up is that access of everything is bad. Like this notion is very common, like be moderate, do things which, you know, balance it out, etc. And I think for me, I like to travel a lot. So these past few months are challenging in itself. I can't physically move. But while coding the website of our project, I realized this hyperlink is how amazing this is. I mean, I had the time to even think about how these, I mean, then I was, so I do, and also differentiating between the hyperlink to open in a new tab and the hyperlink to open in the same page is also very poetic. You know, you need to understand, okay, this open in the same page, which catches my attention, and this goes in a separate tab, which I will look at later, you know, or I may not look at just there. So I think this times in the past few months for me and doing this project has also fed into this idea of the similarities, yet similarities between these two words, but how difficult or how different they can be based on circumstances.
And just to continue, sorry, Sebastian, go ahead.
No, it's just it's an interesting thing that you were mentioning, that now that you can't travel, you say.
Physically, yeah.
Yeah, but here's the thing: you can. you can't travel as far. But, get hold of a bicycle and spend a day, and all of a sudden you're down by the fjord and exploring a totally new area that you've never been to before.
I think for me, the confusion of words between a journey and travel is what is kind of in my head. For example, the travel has always been going outside my country in Pakistan. Like I was tell somebody, okay, I'm traveling to Sri Lanka, let's say. So for me, travel is going out of the country where I'm born to stay in. And journey for me has been more, okay, I'm going to see my father in different cities, kind of a small journey I'm going to do, So for me, it's also challenging. I mean, you're right. I think Denmark itself is a country which is beautiful in different cities, and I could travel there. But I think these keywords which have been fed in my head for so long needs new definitions as well.
I had a period like 20 years ago. One of my favorite authors was writing about how strange it was to stand in a suburb you'd never been to. So I started doing that. I went to areas, the suburbs of Copenhagen, where I had no business there, at all. And it was just, on the surface, it was just the most boring, bland place you could find on the planet. There's a train station, then there's a small pedestrian street with the usual shops that are pretty much the same all over. And then some, social housing and villas and the school and shit.
And do you end up doing the same with hyperlinks sometimes? Is it like you think it's this phenomenon?
Well, the funny thing is that this is before hyperlinks, before the web even, at least before it became common knowledge. I was using it maybe, mid-80s or something, late 80s. That it turned into some really, really interesting adventures that I wouldn't be without, but it was simply a question of putting myself in a position where I'd never been to before. And that might, to a certain extent, be, the essence of travel. Whereas with a hyperlink, you normally have an intent to what you're doing. You expect that if you click this hyperlink, you will not be lied to and end up somewhere else. You will go to tuman.de to buy yourself a new product of some description, or you will get a cultural product that you can enjoy and talk about. And, whatever the case may be, it's all very function-based, whereas travel is not necessarily function-based to the same extent.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would like a quick comment in the hyperlinks thing. I mean, so when you're downloading something in our country, there are several hyperlinks and several download buttons, and you need to check which is the correct one in this. So I think this experience itself has added a lot of meaning to hyperlinks in my life, where you're bombarded with 10 download buttons and 9 of them are ads, and you need to click one which will give you the right file. And I think this experience somehow correlates with travel as well. When you're on your journey and then you're bombarded with a lot of stuff which could be spam, but still it's a
direct correlation between arriving at the train station and then navigating the dodgy area right next to the train station. It's always like that around the main central station. That's where you can get all the prostitutes and illegal drugs you want.
And those days I then started using this inspect element feature on websites, so you just can directly see if this hyperlink is correct or just fake. So I think, I think there was a quick comment I wanted to make on this dodginess of life.
It's a good point.
At some point, we came to discussion of our offline world, and we have very nice connection and a very nice question in connection to discussion of the hyperlinks. So this is a question directed to you, Sebastian and Najam. So to you, what feels like a hyperlink in the offline world? We had right now the example of the travel link, but that from you, Sebastian, but you told that it's not like hyperlinking because you consider this another way. But what could be then hyperlink in the offline world?
Well, if you maintain the postulate that I started off with, saying that a hyperlink to, in most cases at least, unless you're in the dodgy websites, it has a specific function. So, you execute a particular thing when going there. So in some cases, you could argue that the hyperlink is that which you intend. The type of travel that you make, for example, to your workplace, that that you do normally 5 days a week, if you're a full-time employee, or it may be a travel down to the local supermarket because you need to execute a particular function down there, you know. But that's only focusing on the particularity of it, you know. There's not that much surprise in a hyperlink unless you're inside a narrative construct that's utilizing it as a mean of propulsion. Like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the text adventure, the hypertext adventure, which is hilarious to play. I just started that yesterday, based on and inspired from amongst others the Branching Tree Greenland project that you were doing, Najam. So I started playing text adventures again. Hypertext adventures is great fun.
I think hyperlink for me in offline world, okay, the hyperlink definition in my head is the purpose it serves is give information to people who don't have and to save time. Okay, so for me in offline world, it will be, for example, if I organize my cabinet, I just do blacks, whites, reds, greens. So I know I'd save time by knowing, okay, my black shirt will be in black, or my, you know, if I'm, since I use a lot of spices in my food, so I would know, okay, I can organize them on the basis of how hot spices are. So whoever next comes to my house to cook, I will just tell them, hey, you know, this is a box and this is left to right, the spices level increases. So I think this is one of the things that come to my mind when I think of hyperlink in an offline world. And I'm not as organized. I wish I would, but I think this somehow gives me a reflex of hyperlink.
That opens up to a whole discussion on physicality, because so far we've assumed that we were the physical beings that needed to move in order for a hyperlink to be executed. Maybe because we're into this whole travel discourse at the same time. But as you say, absolutely, you know, a hyperlink could in principle be a particular spice that you wanted to increase, and then you would link into that one. That makes me think about, you know, if you want to do in the digital realm, you know, you want to share an experience with somebody. You know, like, for example, I'm very happy with the film called the psychedelic horror film called Mandy. So I found a deeply illegal link and sent to one of my friends. That's just a hyperlink so that I could share that experience with him.
Yeah.
Now, if I were to do that in the real world, I would need to get hold of a physical copy of Mandy and move my physical ass down and physically give it to him.
Yeah.
So, you know, the hyperlink in an offline world could be an object, you know.
Yeah, I think it's just, again, it's what we expect to be organized, fast moving, and on top of the information. This is what the expectations become. So if some of our friends are saying, okay, I want to see a film which is humorous, which is adult, and which is this and that type, and suddenly we give that person the link which says the time for that person, and then, you know, it's just like, I agree with Sebastian, like this becomes like an object with a lot of responsibilities, actually, in an offline world. And we are taking it granted online. When we see a hyperlink, it's just that, you know, it's just you expect it to be there.
Yeah, it's just there. And
cool. So we're speaking already for 23 minutes.
Oh yeah,
like we are. Yes, like if you have anything to add, like closer to the end, or if you want to sum up somehow your ideas, please do this. I think we really had a very great discussion with you, really finding this in-between connections for the words that at first could seem very close, but at the
I feel like Najam and I could continue going on for hours, but we would need to have some kind of a, you know, physical space to do it in, you know, a park and some beers or something. That would be really good. I'm sure we'd be sitting there until 4 a.m.
This will be the next step in the world after quarantine.
That's not going on Twitch.
I think for my side, to wrap it up, is just, I would say, we tend to put things in boxes, and we want to put, okay, this hyperlink and this box is travel, this box is pleasure, this box is this. But all these words are interconnected, and everything is interconnected, let's say. I mean, and for me, it's just that in this past few months, I've been able to realize more and more about life as how it is interconnected. And we're seeing the world is interconnected, as this virus is everywhere now. Everybody is doing somehow the same things. So yeah, I mean, I would say that, yeah, everything has a deep meaning, and it could be same, but yet it could be different.
Okay,
there's this
so
beautiful,
thanks a lot for your nice
beautiful credo of when you travel, you don't travel and meet people, you travel and meet yourself.
Yes,
I love that one.
Cool. Nice. Thanks a lot for this nice ending and for your fruitful and very energetic conversation. I really hope that you enjoyed this time as much as I, and I hope that all our viewers also enjoyed as we do in this space. So thanks you a lot, and I just want to say that the next session will start in 35 minutes directly at 2 Central European time with the next text, so just join us later. Thanks a lot for seeing us. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.